What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. Sorry about that. I'm your Steel Curtain Network host, Daniel, alongside with me, as always, Shannon White. Hey, if there's one way the Steelers could have won the bye week, it appears like they did so this weekend. How are you feeling, my man, after a week off of Steeler football? Did you miss it?
Oh, I always do. That's why I usually don't pay a lot of attention. I do other things instead of football on the bye weeks,
Yeah.
and uh, because you do miss seeing the team play, and sometimes you're hoping they can find some rhythm. And now if they're in rhythm, you hate to see the bye week because it can throw them off rhythm. But this time, it really, even though I don't like early season buys, they did need it to get some guys some more time to get healthy, and to get over the jet lag, the travel. And as you say, with all three other teams in the division losing, they actually won the bye week.
Yeah. I mean, the Steelers are in first place in the AFC North at 3-1. A lot of teams lost. The Bills end up losing, going to 4-1. I think right now, if the playoffs were to start today, which is a little early to say, but if they did, I think the Steelers would be in the third seat in the AFC, given the fact that they haven't played as many games as the Buffalo Bills and some of the other teams. Uh, you know, we're at the quarter part of the season. I mean, I'm sure everybody would have taken it. If anybody would have said at the beginning of the year, hey, the Steelers are going to be 3-1 at the bye week in first place in the AFC North, with everybody seemingly going in the wrong direction rapidly, I think everybody would have taken this.
Oh yeah. Again, we talked, in the off season and before in a preseason there, injuries decide seasons.
Mm-hmm.
You can overcome a rash of injuries, but if you have season ending injuries or the majority of the season, you're going to miss injuries to your stars. It's debilitating. And like what's happened to Burrows, going to miss, maybe 3 months. And here's the thing: if they're out of contention, why bring him back? I mean, give him
True.
the full allotted amount of time. And we're going to cover the other teams in the division, but the Ravens are hurting. The Bengals are hurting, and the Browns are the Browns. So I mean, it's just it's right now. It's time for the Steelers to make hay, and they need to take advantage of it.
I agree 100%. There's some players that the Steelers aren't strangers to the injury bug themselves. They've had quite a bit of injuries through this time. So you're absolutely right. Injuries do play a role, but it's also how you deal with the injuries. Yeah. And although the Steelers maybe perhaps haven't dealt with it the best, they have done it in ways that still allowed them to win the game. And so they've learned from their mistakes. They've healed up through wins, and they had to buy, in my opinion, it couldn't have come at a better time at this point. I know a lot of people looked at it before the season started, including myself. When I found out that the international game was going to be week 4, I was like, Steelers are going to have a week 5 bye. I called it then. Yeah. And sure enough, it happened. And I'm actually okay with the fact that it did. So there's some Steeler players that are returning, that are expected to return. Joy Porter Jr. is one of them. Yeah. You have Jaylen Warren is the other, and Alex Highsmith, some players that are key contributors to both sides of the field. Who makes the bigger impact out of those three?
Well, to me, it's JPJ, because you're going to be without Ramsey for a while.
That's
now,
true.
Again, they said that Austin might go on IR, which is 4 weeks minimum, but it's not for sure yet. But Ramsey, they haven't mentioned IR, so I'm assuming hopefully a week or 2.
Yeah.
And as you say, happening before the bye, that helps. But with him being out, they really need JPJ.
They have a short week. After the Browns, it's Thursday night in Cincinnati. Cincinnati has their problems and things of that nature, but they're still traveling on a short week against a division foe. Steelers haven't been very, very good against in those situations. Now, again, it's Browning now as their quarterback. Some people are or thinking it might be Russell Wilson at that point, which I wouldn't be opposed to, because if the Bengals ended up trading for like Russ or something, that could do wonders for the comp formula and get the Steelers back in line for what they were expecting.
Yep.
But it's a short week. Does that take any consideration about whether or not you're going to play some of these guys like a Jalen? We'll look at JPJ, Alex Highsmith, and Jalen Warren. Jalen, it sounded like he was going to play against the Vikings. They pulled him back at the last minute. Joey Porter Jr., it's been up in the air. It's been week to week, every week, and he just hasn't played. And Alex Highsmith, I think he was limited, but obviously he didn't make the trip or anything like that. Do you think that these guys are for sure going to be in this game this upcoming week?
Barring a setback, which can happen, during the practice week. But, barring a setback, I think they all three will play. As you say, Warren just was a game-time decision because you've got a veteran in Gainwell and Johnson. They might have wanted to get a little bit of work, and they said, why risk Warren? Make sure he's completely healthy for the rest of the year. And JPJ, same thing. I mean, the Steelers secondary has the potential to be really, really good. Because you got to remember Brandon Eccles is in there too, guys. And Eccles has been a great pickup for the Steelers. So, and then Highsmith, you want an extended look at Herbig. Herbig looks excellent. Yeah. I mean, he looks like a starter himself, and an impact pass rusher. And then Sawyer getting a little extra work, and he's actually able to contribute as a rookie. So I think it was wise holding them out, and now I think they're all ready.
Well, Jalen Warren, they had a bonus practice today, and Jalen Warren was back out there with the sleeve on the leg. So that's the one thing that kind of concerns me. We're going to find out a little bit more tomorrow when Mike Tomlin speaks at his weekly press conference. We're going to find out a little bit more about the injury status. You mentioned Calvin Austin. He has a shoulder injury. He ended up going to the hospital. I think he tweeted out or posted on X something to the effect that he was doing well, or on Instagram. Steelers didn't go out and get a receiver. If he ends up going to IR, is that a mistake? Should the Steelers have gone out? They have the capital there. They have, a couple of late round draft picks. They can financially afford some guys. I know that the former Titan Burke, I want to say is his last name.
Yes, Burke.
He's available now. I think he just got cleared. Are you surprised that the Steelers didn't make a move, knowing that there's the possibility of an IR positioning for Calvin Austin?
Well, I think they still got time. The trade deadline hasn't passed yet, I don't think.
Right. No, not until like week 10 or something like that.
I think they're kind of waiting to see, who's eliminated and who might turn into sellers. It's kind of like during the baseball season. They wait to see who's buyers and who's sellers. So you look for the Saints, maybe the Panthers, some teams that have a surplus. The Packers have a surplus of receivers, but they've had two of them injured, and they're just now coming back. So I think it's been smart to, to take your time, because, they knew that, excuse me, they knew that Burks would be coming off IR.
Yeah.
And that he would, so there's some guys there that could potentially, anybody the Steelers get, I don't think it's going to be a 1-year rental. I think they want to bring in somebody young enough to integrate into the system. And because there'll be a different quarterback next year, probably. We don't know for sure, but probably. But you want somebody that can grow with this young offense, because the offense is very young outside of Rodgers.
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
So I'm not really that shocked that they haven't made a move yet, because, the price for some of these guys could come down a little if the team is eliminated. Or you could tell, okay, it's week 4 or 5. This team ain't going nowhere. They might be willing to sell.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope they would have made a move in these 2 weeks. That way there could have been, I know there's not a lot that you can do during this time. You're not allowed to practice and things of that nature, but you could have given the guy the playbook, and he could have gotten accustomed to a couple of plays and things of that nature. That way he's a little bit more accustomed to getting on a moving train. It's a little bit easier to do so on a bye week. I guess it probably would be just as good to do so after the Cincinnati game. Maybe perhaps.
Yeah, 10 days. Yeah.
Yeah. You got 10 days there. I don't think there would be any kind of trade. I know some folks were looking at or thinking that maybe the Bengals could be sellers of T. Higgins, after the amount of money they gave him and those type of things. I just don't think that they would do a interdivisional trade like that with a player that could hurt them in the end. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, I
And
think
so,
that the Steelers have it's all went their way so far, as far as some of the teams that they're interested in watching their roster and who might become available have not had good starts.
yeah.
I haven't got a chance to ask you. I've had people ask me, how did I feel about the Pickens trade now? And I still feel fine with the Pickens trade, because here's the only issue I have is we know how this offense started out this year. And it was going to be kind of the offense we're seeing regardless, because it's still being limited by the offensive line. Rodgers can't look down the field and find the guys deeper down the field unless he has the time to do so. And they haven't been able to establish the running game either. And they're winning on some big plays here and there, some really good plays, whether it be schematically or just a great throw and by Rodgers and a great catch by the receivers. They're scoring some plays like that, but it's not just consistent long drives down the field. So that's what we want to see next. But I just feel like that nobody's making, like Metcalf's not having the catches that we expected, I expected. Freiermuth's been invisible. Jonnu's not really done much. Who would you really say has stood out in this offense? Now, if Pickens was still here, I figure Pickens would still be frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's getting a lot of usage with a veteran quarterback and a more open down the field throw passing attack. So actually, I think it was a benefit for both teams. I still think that Pickens would be a problem if he was here.
I also, Pickens right now is benefiting by CD Lamb not being in the game. CD Lamb being injured and Pickens being the number one option. Yeah. Right now, today is what's affording him the looks and the throws and things of that nature. But once CD Lamb comes back, that's not going to be the case anymore. He's going to demand his attention, his passes, his throws, his touches. And so, to me, I think it's right, exactly. Yeah. But to me, I think it's more of, I don't think that the personalities of George Pickens and Aaron Rodgers could have coexisted on this team. No. What Aaron Rodgers expects out of the players surrounding him and the effort that George Pickens put in, I think that would have been a ticking time bomb, in my opinion.
Can you imagine if the pounding and then the way Rodgers hollers and screams at him sometimes, which I have no problem with that.
Right.
But because to me, he's not trying to show anybody up. He's trying to say, this is what we got to do. This is what we practice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when Calvin Austin come back in and deflected and made an interception.
Yeah.
He once he went out, he should have stayed out. And that was his job. And don't know why he did it. It probably just a lack of focus. But if he'd have done that same thing to Pickens, he'd have had somebody trying to babysit him and give him a pacifier on the sideline.
Exactly. And I think that, the way Rodgers gets, as you mentioned, and how personal George Pickens takes everything, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a brawl in the sideline if that was to, be the situation. If Aaron were to yell at him for doing something wrong or not having enough effort, which he would have been in his right mind. But I mean, George just is too immature. And, in the moments when he's getting the ball and things of that nature, he's happy and he can be a productive receiver when he's happy. Should the Steelers have acquired more for him? I think he might have an argument for that. But at the end of the day, he didn't have the numbers that you would expect a team to pay more for. Not with the Steelers. I mean, and some of that could have been because of the quarterback situation, the offensive coordinator situation that he's had to deal with, and so many other things. But at the end of the day, he had some spectacular plays, but because of the offense inept idea with Matt Canada or the lack of an arm by the quarterbacks in certain situations, he only put up so many yards. I think he only had 1,000 yard season, maybe not even close. I think he maybe had like a 900 yard season.
Yeah,
And,
I know he had a 900 something yard. Yeah.
yeah, and he did well, but I mean,
as you say, he was. I mean, but I mean, besides Matt Canada, which I will not go into again, but uh, the offensive line has greatly hindered this offense for years now. And there's some plays and some you just take out of the game plan because you don't have the protection, and then it's hindered the running game, and then the conservative approach by the head coach, not wanting to use the middle of the field. Because this weekend, Daniel, one little bit I did watch, tons of turnovers in the middle of the field. Hit passes turning into interceptions. And Tomlin knows that. And he hates that. He despises those plays more than anything. So the quarterbacks just, would refuse to throw across the middle. They didn't even run routes across the middle. Well, now we're seeing more because Rodgers likes them. And, there will be an occasional interception, yes. But there's also a lot of big plays that happen over the middle. And Pickens was just never going to get what he needed to be and grow like he needed to grow here. There's a lot of wide receivers that never mature. Stephon Diggs, let's be honest, the guy's a great player, but he's still a bubblehead. And, but he's been however many Pro Bowls and everything. So it could be the same for Pickens. He might always be a really good receiver, and he might have a really good year or two in Dallas, but I think he'll always have the pounding and the not the perfect team player. Let's put it that way. So to me, it's just not a Steeler type. So I'm perfectly fine with him being elsewhere.
I mean, you can just tell about his immaturity with how he still reflects on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean,
he can't get past it. No,
he can't get past it. He's the sour ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever you want to call it, and he's all pouty because they gave up on him. But it is what it is. Claude Bishop comes in with $5. How bad would it be if the Steelers didn't win the division and lost in the first round? Which coaches gets fired? So that would be really bad if the Steelers. That would mean that the Steelers had another collapse, and whether it's relatively soon or at the end of the season, which the Steelers have been known to do under Mike Tomlin at the end of the seasons, have these late season collapse. And unfortunately, I mean, you're going to have your scapegoats, probably Terrell Austin, in my opinion, but the blame should fall on Mike Tomlin if that were to happen, in my opinion. Do I think he gets fired? Probably not. That's just not the Steelers' way of doing things. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with it. I would prefer that if this were to be the case, that the Steelers start off new, like brand new, get a new coach, somebody that's offensive minded, so that way they can work with a young quarterback that they plan and intend on getting. And so, that would be my hope. I just doubt that that's what's going to happen. What do you think, Shannon? Where are you at on this one?
Well, I know we're going to get into the rest of the division, and
barring injury or injuries to some of the major stars, which we can say TJ, Rodgers, the guys that they really can't replace. You can replace Rodgers with Rudolph and whatever, but better than you can TJ, of course. But all I'm saying is that can even the playing field and totally blow up the division like it already has. But I think eventually you run out of excuses. Like right now, if the Steelers don't handle their business the next couple weeks, I know they're divisional games. I know, how tough the division is and teams get up and anybody can beat anybody in the division. But if the Steelers don't handle their business and take advantage of these next two games, because, if you look at the rest of the schedule, the Steelers schedule only gets worse.
Yeah.
And, when you talk about late season collapse, that's a Tomlin thing anymore. The only time it didn't happen is when Rudolph come in and they won out to make the playoffs.
That's
but
true.
What concerns me, Daniel, is the middle of the season. And what I mean with that is they eke out some wins. They did last year when they went first from Fields to Russell. But it wasn't sustainable. How they won, who they was beating, it didn't
we didn't get a sense of confidence. And then when they went into that murderer's row of games, then they got exposed badly because none of the games was really even that close. Except for the Bengals game when Freiermuth dropped it. They could have maybe gotten field goal range there. But what I'm saying is I'm wanting to see steady improvement week by week. Now, we're starting to see a little improvement right now. But I want it to be through fundamentals. They fundamentally execute on both sides of the ball. And we're seeing them get better, developing chemistry. The offensive line start to gel. Now injuries can throw all that off. But I'm saying with relatively good health, we want to see that in this middle part of the season. And that'll make me feel better about later in the year. Because like you, if they collapse again, they got to do something different. Especially if they're going to take a first-round quarterback. You need an offensive-minded head coach capable of developing a rapport with this quarterback and developing a quarterback. And that's something that Tomlin has never had to do.
Yeah, and then this quarterback class isn't shaping out the way a lot of people expected it to either. I know the Steelers have been keeping their eye at the games, but this might actually benefit them in a good way, meaning that they may not have to jump so high to go get a quarterback that they'd like. There's a game, I think it's Illinois and Oregon this weekend, Mendoza versus DeMonte, I think is his name. Those two quarterbacks, I think it's the 3 p.m. kickoff on the East Coast. I believe that those two quarterbacks are expected to be pretty high up there. So if you're interested in who the Steelers might be looking at, I'd check out that game. Mendoza's been pretty good this year. Kind of a little bit of a shocker. I think a lot of people would have said at the beginning of the season, like, hey, you're looking at Archie, you're looking at, the Penn State quarterback, Aller, I can't pronounce his name. And you're looking at the Clemson kid and maybe even LSU guy. And then everybody says, hey, everybody knows that once the season starts, there's going to be some changes. Shoot, by the time the season's over and the time that the senior game is over, everything could be completely mixed up again. And so it's all crazy.
Every year, quarterbacks that are expected to be early high picks fall off because they lose that talent around them and then they fall off. Like say some guys graduate or transfer. Then guys come out of nowhere. Like nobody heard of Joe Burrows till he got to LSU.
That's
Not
true.
really. I mean, let's just be honest. Very seldom do you see a 3 or 4 year quarterback like say Lamar Jackson. Usually now it's a 1 or 2 year window and boom, they blow up. Kenny Pickett did. Different guys. But also we got to remember this. Quarterbacks fall out of favor in the NFL due to ineffectiveness, coaching changes. The new GM or the new coach wants his own quarterback, and he don't want the guy drafted by the previous regime. And let's look at Danny Dimes, Indiana Jones in Indianapolis. I mean, the guy I've heard about is he's a bust, he's a bum, and they look great, and he's lighting it up, and he looks like. Somebody said, he kind of looks like Andrew Luck. And like I said, they call him Indiana Jones. He's got his own nickname already. And they look like a juggernaut. So a lot of times change the scenery brings out the best in a quarterback. Now, what does that say about Anthony Richardson? He was in a very quarterback-friendly system, and he could not do it. Yeah. But again, he was drafted because of his incredible athleticism. But Danny Jones is a very good athlete. But he also is more of a prototypical quarterback, and he's had experience. And experience in New York is unlike anywhere else. I mean, you got 50 reporters with the mic crammed up your nose and all this pressure on you in New York that you don't have in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So you change the scenery, get him in the right program, or in this case, system, with the right coach that wants him there and everything. And they look like the best in that division right now. So the Steelers, somebody could come available that might shock everybody. And the next quarterback, long-term quarterback of Steelers might already be in the NFL. We just don't know. But that's where you got to keep your eyes open, your mind open, Don't have blinders on and just think first round draft pick, because they can come from other places.
That's true. They definitely can. And, like I said, the opinion about this draft class as far as the quarterback position goes is shifted quite a bit, since the start of the college season. And rightfully so. I've been tuning in and watching as much as I can. I was never really into college football too much, but the Steelers are looking at quarterbacks. I got to check it out.
You're looking now. Yeah.
I'm watching now. And, it's a situation where I looked up who the top draft prospects are on Google because I wasn't really familiar with them. I did that before the season started, and I started watching games, watching Clemson versus LSU, and not impressed.
You wouldn't have normally watched.
Yeah. I'm watching them, and I'm like, all right, one of these guys might be a Steelers quarterback, and I'm like, about halfway through, I'm like, I really hope they're not. Yeah. And then, the same thing with with Archie Manning, more so with Archie Manning. I was like high on that train going into the season, and I watched the first game, and I'm like, yo, is this guy hurt?
But did you see the level of high school competition he had? He went to a private Christian school, a much smaller school, a much smaller program, and the guys he was playing, I mean, honestly, there's tiers in high school too. And this isn't like Power 5. This is like, they was little guys, and the level of competition for him to go from that to Texas, it was a huge step. And I ain't saying he can't be good, but I'm just saying he ain't coming out this year, guys. He ain't ready. It's going to take some time, and then we'll see what he can develop into. But people making him being the next second coming of, better than Tom Brady ever was. I mean, I've heard all kind of crazy stuff. And they're doing the same thing with the young wide receiver at Ohio State, saying that he could be the greatest wide receiver. I mean, they haven't done anything yet, fellas. Let's just give him – don't put that kind of pressure on a young man. It ain't fair.
That's true. That is true. And, with Archie, I think there's, the pressure is up there because of the name. The expectation there is that he's probably gone to all the quarterback camps. He's probably trained with Eli and Peyton. Some of that should have rubbed off, some of that knowledge, some of that information. And at this point, I mean, it's not like you said, it's not saying that he can't get there. It's just at this point, he looks very sub-average. Sub-average.
Having to play Ohio State, that ain't fair. He wasn't ready for that.
No. Well, he wasn't ready for the Gators either.
No. I mean, but you're talking about some of the best programs.
That's true.
And he never seen nothing like that coming up. And I don't think that honestly he's got the team around him that a couple of the guys before him had. And so, he's not carrying anybody right now.
Definitely not. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk more about the Steelers' success in the bye week by not doing anything and letting the AFC North fall apart around them. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check it out once you're done listening to this podcast. And if you're listening or watching this on YouTube and that's your main source for Steel Curtain Network content, you're missing quite a bit of content. Go check out the website. There you'll find the audio-only podcast, which include mine, State of the Steelers, which airs out on Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. You won't be disappointed. Go check it out. I'll be previewing the upcoming match against the Cleveland Browns this Saturday. So go check it out. All right. So Steelers are 3-1. The rest of the AFC North seems to be falling apart. The Steelers have been put in a position to perhaps, make some noise and win the division, something they haven't done in the last few seasons. Baltimore Ravens right now, 1-4, still favored to win the division. Does that feel like a little bit of disrespect to you?
yes and no. If we'd have talked about this before the season, I'd say that Ravens were the class of the division.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on both sides of the ball, they have stars. I do not like Harbaugh. Everybody knows that. But they've got an excellent organization from top to bottom. They're really good at drafting and developing players. I think Harbaugh is their weak spot. I'll just be honest. I think he makes terrible coaching decisions. He goes for it when he doesn't have to, and then other times he doesn't. I mean, you just never know what he's going to do. But they've kind of plateaued, even when they were healthy. Early in the year, they had tough games, guys. I mean, they started out the year with some really tough opponents. And that's what happens when you win the division and you're a Super Bowl favorite. They're going to put you up against really tough competition. But now the injuries have mounted, and now they've lost Lamar for a little bit. And which we've seen Tomlin overcome, losing his quarterback to retirement and then the injuries and everything else, and keep them competitive a lot of times, especially in the regular season, where when Harbaugh doesn't have Lamar, he is not the same coach at all. But they can get healthy. Lamar isn't a long-term injury, and they have talent. But I think teams are really focusing in on Henry, knowing that if you can stop Henry, you can really limit that offense. Even if you let Lamar run on you, it's still different than letting Henry get going and just pound you into submission. So teams are selling out to stop Henry and making Lamar or whoever is a quarterback try to beat him, throwing the ball. And that's putting Baltimore in a pickle. But their biggest problem is their defense can't stop nobody. I think they're giving up 35 a game. I mean, as far as points allowed, they're one of the worst defenses. And they give up a lot of big plays. And they got Hamilton, Roquan Smith, but there really isn't anybody else you say, well, man, that's just the dominant defense. They're not playing up to their standards or their capabilities in my mind. Can they turn it around? I never count Baltimore out, especially if they get Lamar healthy and everything. But I think the blooms fell off the rose a little bit with Harbaugh. And you're starting to hit, a lot of their fan base is not happy. Expectations, they can kill you. So I want to see the Steelers get some separation on Baltimore because Baltimore's had their hardest part of their schedule. They're going to get an easier coming up, whereas the Steelers gets harder. So the Steelers need some distance from the Ravens before they have to start playing them and some of these tougher opponents.
Yeah, just kind of looking at the schedule here. So they have a real danger of going to 1-5. They play, it looks like they are
the Rams, right?
Welcoming the Rams. Yeah. I thought it was in LA, but it's actually in Baltimore. And, that's a very winnable game for the Rams, given the amount of injuries that the Ravens have across the board. They got a bye week after that. And so you expect a lot of those players to be coming back and getting healthy, especially their quarterback, Lamar Jackson. And you're right. After that, their schedule kind of lines up. They got the Bears, the Dolphins, the Vikings. That one's on the road. That one can be depending on who's a quarterback there and how they're doing at that point, that can be a very tough game for them. Then they got to play the Browns again, the Jets, Bengals. Then they play the Steelers, Bengals, Patriots, Packers, and then finish off against the Steelers again. Not the most daunting schedule. There's 2 Steeler games and probably the Ravens game. The Patriots look tough. They got a strong defense. They have an opportunity.
They beat Buffalo in Buffalo. So
that's true. So, I mean, that stretch there at the end, it's not easy, playing the Steelers twice. I'm hoping the Steelers are definitely handling business and getting better every week.
Exactly.
By then they should be humming on all cylinders as long as everybody's healthy. And so, if that ends up being the case, I mean, they got an opportunity to lose some games at the end of the season. They got that middle part of the roadway the road there for the about 4 or 5 weeks there after the bye week, that they can do some catching up, so to speak. The Steelers have to stay ahead of them. They got 2 divisional games back to back that are looking favorable for the Steelers, so they can jump up ahead. So the next team that we're going to talk about are the Bengals. They're without Burrow.
I wanted to ask you one question first.
Go ahead.
Based on what I've seen, I really can't make an excuse for the Ravens defense being as bad as it's been. I mean, they've got Hamilton, they got Roquan Smith. They have a good player. I know their star defensive lineman's out for the year. I can't say his last name. Starts with an M. But
Matabuke.
Something like that. Bouquet or Matabuke.
Yeah, Matabuke.
And then they got some solid corners. That in Hamilton, Humphrey and Wiggins. Is that who Nate Wiggins? Didn't they just draft him? But they got some good cornerbacks. So there's no reason for them to be giving up this many points. Because, they made the Chiefs put up a good bit on them, and the Chiefs haven't been an offensive juggernaut this year. So, Houston just embarrassed them.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if they can turn that around. So if I was a Ravens fan, that would be my biggest concern is the defense right now.
Yeah, I would say you're right. They really have given it up to a lot of teams. They let's see, let me go back up real quick. They gave up 37 to the Chiefs, 38 to the Lions, 17 to the Browns, 41 to the Bills. So outside of the Browns, everybody's had almost 40 points on them.
Well, Texans, they had 40-something yesterday.
44.
Yeah.
44, 37, 38, and 41.
Yeah.
That's a lot of points. Jeez. Yeah. That don't sound like the Baltimore Ravens defense that we remember. And I like this.
It's funny. You've got the Ravens when healthy with a more dominant offense.
Yeah.
The Bengals when healthy, dominant offense. Neither team looks like they got a defense.
No.
Then you got the Steelers, which hopefully the defense is going to be a strong point, and the Browns, which the defense is a strong point. So It's funny. The division's kind of, half defense, half offense.
That's true. And the Bengals, they've given up quite a few points themselves.
Yes.
They gave up 37 to the Lions, 28 to the Broncos, 48 to the Vikings, 27 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they're going to be playing the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. Another game that's probably going to be a loss for them. They're going backwards fast. Joe Burrow's injured again. He's been injured multiple times throughout his career. A lot of season-ending injuries in his short career. How bad is this going to get for them? I'm assuming they're going to be picking top 5, top 7.
Yeah, like I said, with the way it's looking for them, you don't even bring Burrows back. Because the season could be over well before he comes back. I don't see. I'm like you. There could be a trade for Russell Wilson, a trade for Winston. Winston would make his rounds to play for every team in the AFC North at some point. But they, I think they need something. But the problem is they got they're top heavy, just like the Steelers were top heavy on defense. All the money's on the defense, and with the Bengals, it's all on the offense. I know that your quarterback is your superstar, the face of the franchise. He's like, I want to keep the band together. And it sounds great to have Chase and Higgins and the third receiver, I can't say his name either, the guy from the Ivy League. And then they got a good running game at times and a tight end. But their defense, they got Hendrickson back, but they don't have much money left on that side of the ball. And you knew they were going to be one of the worst defenses this year. But everybody said, well, they'll score 38 a game, and as long as they don't give up more than that, they can win. But it's not a championship roster right now.
Oh, no, not at all.
If Burrows is going to continue to get hurt, which, as you say, this is his third major injury in his young career, with the knee and then the wrist and now this, he's not a really big guy. He's a smaller quarterback, and he does a lot of things keeping the play alive. But it's one thing if you can do that and stay healthy, but it doesn't appear he can. So this might be a deal that they're so enamored by how close they come to the Super Bowl. It's hard to admit we might need to change and do something different.
Yeah.
But to me, the Bengals and the Steelers are similar in that their offensive lines have got to improve. They have to improve to where they can have a steady running game, protect the quarterback. In the Steelers' case, our quarterback's old.
Yeah.
And the Bengals quarterback, he's fragile. So you got to have a running game and an offensive line. So the Bengals have never been able to complete the offensive line because they don't put a lot of money in it. And the Steelers, kind of the same thing. They got some high draft picks, but they got to develop and they got to have time to develop.
Yeah. The other thing too is at what point do the Bengals become sellers? You got Trey Hendrickson, who's, he's probably not coming back next year. You might get something for him. Same thing when it comes to like I mentioned, you paid a lot of money to the receiver group. Do you get rid of a Higgins or something of that nature? I think that you start, I think those discussions start to happen so that way they can build some more capital into the rest of their team. But you hope they don't do that. You hope they keep all those players and stay and continue to be a bad team. The next team in the AFC North is the one that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be playing this week. They're going to be starting Dylan Gabriel in his second start as a quarterback in the NFL, coming off of a long trip in London, then to be traveling on the road to go against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Acrisure Stadium. The defense looks good for the Cleveland Browns. The offense has been shaky. I think they have Judkins looks like a quality running back. I don't think he's Nick Chubb 2.0, but he looks like a quality running back. He's getting better. I wonder if the Steelers just kind of stuck with Caleb Johnson, if he'd had some sort of similar trajectory, where Judkins wasn't the greatest right off the bat, but he seems to be coming along. He seems to be getting more comfortable. The Dylan Gabriel, he had some throws. He's a left-handed thrower of the football. What kind of problems do you think can arise from that? A left-handed thrower, not really much tape on him outside of one game. What else can you see that the Steelers need to be on their toes about?
To me, the biggest worry would be overconfidence.
That's true too.
Yes, he's a rookie. He's a smart rookie. But when I watched him at the combine, I said he'll never be a full-time starter in the NFL. He don't have the arm strength. He's short. The ball, he's an accurate, Chad Pennington got by with the mid to lower level arm talent, but he was incredibly accurate and he anticipated well. And the young man has a lot of those same qualities. But when he has to really get on it and put some zip on the ball, he just can't. And he can't see over the line good. One thing about Russell Wilson, he's short, but he throws a good deep ball. He has a big arm. That's not Gabriel. So I'm not too concerned as long as the Steelers are not overconfident. I'm concerned about Judkins.
Yeah, me too.
My opinion coming out, I liked him better than any other running back. I said it, even Jency. And I had people say I was crazy that Jency was just, the second coming. But I'm like, if the Steelers could have anybody, I wanted Judkins. I liked Henderson. And he's had some success with the Patriots. But Judkins has it all. He's got speed, burst, power. And he looked really good Sunday.
He did.
He rips off some runs effortlessly, 15, 20 yards. The only reason he got pushed out of bounds was he took it the distance on a few occasions. So the Steelers are going to have to pressure Gabriel like they've been doing. I like the pressure they've been putting on quarterbacks. He's not incredibly mobile. He doesn't keep his eyes downfield when he scrambles because he's short. and he loses sight of his receivers. He doesn't have the arm to throw deep. And he looks to the left all the time. If you'll notice, he doesn't throw to the right very often. He locks on one guy and he throws to the left. So the Steelers need to bait him into stuff. Disguise their coverages, move their coverages, pressure him from the left side, make him roll to the right if he is going to roll. Like I said, as long as you don't give up big plays and you limit Judkins, you should handle this team.
I agree. I think that's going to be the biggest component. I think they're going to try to run the ball on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers defense has been shaky when it comes to defending the run, especially some of these faster, scattier type of backs that can move and one cut kind of guys too. They have, the Walker, for instance, he had the two different running backs in Seattle, and Walker was way more successful than the other guy. Judkins kind of reminds me of that type of runner. And so that's kind of what concerns me a little bit about this game, but I think all attention is going to be on that, on the running game. The Steelers are going to want Gabriel to beat him with his arm. They're going to try to make that be the possibility. Like if the Browns are going to win, it's going to be with Gabriel's arm, not on the legs of Judkins. And so if I would anticipate that being the game plan, so to speak. They're a dumpster. They're always a dumpster when it comes to the Browns. They're in fourth place. They're going to be in fourth place. I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a quarterback high next year also and have, a host of quarterbacks in their quarterback room at the beginning of the season next year. I think they've had 10 starting quarterbacks since Baker Mayfield. That's crazy.
I heard, I think it was since 2000, they've had 41.
Jesus.
I mean, it's by far the most of anybody in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. And so, they're a dumpster fire. They're going to continue to be one. I don't anticipate them being relevant anytime soon, but they're the next opponent for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as you mentioned before, I think the biggest worry is looking ahead. This is a divisional game. This is an opportunity for the Pittsburgh Steelers to go up, not just in this game, but again, you don't want to look ahead, but if they do win the next two, those are two divisional games that are very winnable and would put the Steelers at 5-1, with the rest of the division kind of, still hurting and maybe perhaps coming off of some losses on their own. It's a good momentum builder as well. Last thing I wanted to kind of get your ideas on a little bit of bye week, so to speak, awards. So we'll go through what we normally pick at the end of the year, but we'll pick it up at the bye week. So as of right now, who is your offensive MVP of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, I'd have to say Aaron Rodgers, because to me, that's been the difference of what we're seeing this year out of recent seasons. Checking out of bad plays, getting the blocking assignments right, communicating with his offensive line. Now, whether they execute is different, but he's putting them in the right positions and being able to make those quick passes, quick reads, get the ball out, knowing that he don't have any time yet. And hopefully this line's going to improve. But, yeah, right now, I mean, Jaylen Warren deserves consideration, obviously, but he's not played every game and not been as effective in every game. There's been different guys step up.
Yeah.
I'm happy with Metcalf. He's been limited by, again, the offensive line's limited everything. But right now I'd have to say Rodgers.
I can't disagree with you. And I think that majority of that is because of the player usage as well, whether it be because of injury or other factors. Jaylen Warren hasn't been the guy that was getting the rock like early on, and then when he did, he got kind of hurt. So he didn't play last week. So it's been kind of a limited play for him. The tight end room has been a carousel as well, as far as who's gotten the most starts. This last game, Darnell Washington by far got the most snaps, not starts. I meant the most snaps by any of the tight ends. I think he had like 46 snaps compared to 13 for Pat and for Jonnu Smith. So and it didn't seem like a bad game plan, having a guy out there that can catch and also block, in that position. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more Darnell Washington. I wouldn't be opposed to it either.
I wanted to ask you one too. We're talking about the MVP.
Yeah.
Most disappointing offensive Steeler, in my opinion. But the beginning of the year, I'd said Broderick Jones after the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But I think he's recouped some, and he's playing some better, at least effort-wise, is what I paid a lot of attention. And I'm hoping they get gel and everything. For me, the biggest disappointment is Pat Freiermuth. To me, Freiermuth is invisible. When he has gotten opportunities, he's dropped. He could have made that one throw Rodgers made was a thing of beauty.
That's true.
Like a Hall of Fame throw, and he dropped it. And, so that's not good. The one thing I remember about him this year, especially, is that he can't block worth the crap, and he drops a perfect pass. So, but who's yours?
You can't really get off of that one. I mean, that's a really excellent choice. If I had to say another, I would say Isaac Seumalo. I expected a lot more out of Isaac Seumalo out of the middle. There's been a lot of pressure out of the middle. I know he was hurt last year, and he had some injuries going on again this year in the in training camp. But I was expecting him to be more of what we had seen prior to his injury last year, and doesn't seem like that's to be the case. It seems like he's really struggling there. It looks like he's getting bull rushed into the backfield multiple times. Sometimes I don't know if he's confused or his head's not in the game. But there's been times where the tackle just has a free run at Rodgers. There's been 2 sacks that were like that right there between Isaac Seumalo and Frazier. And I don't understand it. But yeah, for me, the biggest disappointment would have probably been Isaac Seumalo at this point, because I had high expectations of him. And so
I can see that. I agree.
Defensive side, MVP and disappointment. We'll continue with that. Who's your MVP on the defense at this point at the bye week?
This is deep. To me, we're seeing the defense slowly start to play more like what I want to see. And I really give so much of that credit to Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, with his versatility, and they trust him, and he's moving around. Some of the big plays, it looks like it was his fault. They really weren't his fault. But I really think that he has helped solidify that. Elliott, when he's been in there, and he missed a little bit of time, but Elliott is incredible as long as he's healthy and playing. But he just hasn't played enough for me. Watt has kind of woke up the last couple of weeks a little more. Herbig's have a really small sample size.
Yeah.
But I think he's been the most dominant player on the Steelers defense at this point. But if I had to pick one, I think that the steadiest guy, and who is each week, is just keeps playing better and better. I have to say it, and I'm not being the biggest fan, but Patrick Queen. If you've watched the last couple of weeks, he has made some big plays, saving tackles. And he's consistently getting to the hole, finding the ball carrier and taking him down. He had a big sack last week. I think Queen has stepped up. He seems more aggressive and more comfortable than he did last year.
You're reading my mind, man. I was going Patrick Queen as well.
Oh, where'd you go?
I was going Patrick Queen. I think the same thing. I think he's taken his game up to another level. Yeah. It hasn't been perfect, but I think it's each week he's gotten better and better, and he's taken the role of the green dot well this year. I think, last year it was a lot of new players, also him in a new position. With a new team, with new players around him, and some of the same factors are still there to this year as far as new players to the team and what you want to do. But overall, I think he's done very, very well. Game in, game out. I think there's been some splash from other players. As far as disappointment for me, before this game against the Minnesota Vikings, I would have said Peyton Wilson. Peyton Wilson was my biggest disappointment up until this game against the Vikings. I think he came alive. I think he's, he showed Hart, going out there and running down Jordan Addison and things of that nature. Keanu Benton would have been another guy, but again, he had a huge game against the Vikings. So I'm hoping that those two guys can continue in that same trajectory. So taking those two guys out of the equation, because they are starting to move in the right direction. I mean, I guess Juan Thornhill, I haven't heard much about him. He's out there. He was, Deshaun Elliott goes down. The defensive backs look bad. I mean, you can probably even say in some places might look at Darius Slay. I know PFF has, because they said that he hasn't had the best season this year. And he didn't agree with them. He came out publicly and said that he didn't agree with that. And so, I think you might be looking at one of those two defensive backs back there, but early on, before Derek Harmon got into the game, there was a lot of teams running on this defense as well. So it's there could be a few players. What about you?
Well, I agree with everything you said. Keanu Benton, I would say Loudermilk, but Loudermilk, he should have never been starting in the first place.
Yeah.
I'll say Benton from the aspect of he just is not a nose tackle. He's being played out of position. If you watch when they moved him and they had two linemen inside on a lot of the pass rush, and he was one of them. He had a very good game against the Vikings, his best game in a long time, playing from his more natural position. He's a 4-3 tackle. He can even play 3-4 end. And I thought he would eventually replace Hayward when Hayward retires. But he's not a nose tackle, guys. He's just not. And the Steelers have Black. They have Equale, who are nose tackles. They can, of course, Black can play end as well. But you also have Harmon. I don't know if anybody noticed when Harmon was down inside, he tied up two blockers multiple times. He's collapsed in the pocket. As somebody said, Harmon has made a monster impact. And everybody's like, well, don't expect too much out of the rookie. No, he doesn't play like a rookie. All training camp, they said he looks like a veteran. And he just approaches the game in a professional manner. He takes it very, very serious. He's focused. He's not your normal rookie. And I agree with you. I think since he's been in there, the running game gets better each week. And we see Peyton Wilson, when he gets a little bit of help in front of him, what Peyton Wilson can do, he can do the same thing that Patrick Queen does. These guys can run sideline to sideline, or in Wilson's case, 60 yards downfield to take a wide receiver from behind, because, that was the kind of effort you're going to get. So everybody that was down on Peyton Wilson after the first couple of weeks, he's not meant to take on guards at the second level, 6-7 yards downfield. That's if that happens, Wilson's going to lose. But most middle linebackers lose that battle. This isn't LeVar Kirkland. You don't have these monster linebackers anymore. These are move guys that you got to have in the modern NFL. So, my biggest disappointment is Keanu Benton, but also, like you said, he has turned it around, it appears. But it's partly because they used him in a more favorable position last week.
Yeah. No, I can't disagree with you there, and I think you're right. I mean, the defensive running game, it has been spotty. It got better as the season has progressed, but early on, it was a real big Achilles heel for the defense. I can assume that we're probably both going to agree on the rookie of the year so far is Derek Harmon and his impact coming off of the injury.
Hands down.
Yeah, there's nobody else. What about coach of the year? Who do you think has shined above the rest? Or at the bye, not coach of the year, coach at the bye.
Yeah. I think that Arthur Smith has done some good things. Part of that's because he has a quarterback capable. He trusts enough to do some of the things, check him out of bad plays and stuff. I mean, Austin, I don't blame Austin maybe as much as I should, because I believe it's Tomlin's defense. But I believe that when he has a little freedom, especially in the secondary, because that's what he truly is as a secondary coach. So is Tomlin, for that matter. They got the horses back there when they're all healthy. And I think that we're going to see, hopefully, improvement as the year goes on with chemistry and, not having a breakdown here or there in communication. As far as I think positional coaches, I love Dunbar because he does such a great job with that defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand Harmon and Black are really good. They're exceptionally talented young defensive linemen. But if you don't have the defensive line coach to get these guys ready, they're not going to develop as fast as these guys have. I'm sorry. That's just what I believe. And when you see how good Harmon's doing and Black's doing, I think you've got to give Dunbar a ton of credit. I don't think Dunbar's the one saying, "Okay, Benton, you're our nose tackle." I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I think he knows.
Yeah.
You hear players talking in their podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and they even kind of mention that maybe Benton's out of position.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Benton is definitely out of position. He's not a nose tackle, and I would have gone with Dunbar as well based on what he's done with Wyatt Black and Derek Harmon. He's been a guy that's been under fire, because of defensive line hasn't always looked up to par. They go out there this past year in the draft and really focus in on the need there with the two players, and I think they've hit gold on both of them to this point.
Yep.
And if they can continue to develop them, and maybe even perhaps just put them in the best position for what they do best. If Black is better at the tackle position, given how large he is and stuff like that, that's fine. He doesn't have to be a nose, but then it'd probably behoove you of not using a defense that requires a nose tackle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Play a little bit more where these guys are in a favorable matchup in a favorable position instead of putting them in a situation just because it's your base or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think there needs to be considerations. They're switching up formations, nickel, dime, and hey, do some 4-3. You're basically doing it anyway when you got Watton and Highsmith in there, and you got your two tackles inside. They've got the horses. They really do. And I got to give, Cam Hayward, I was a little frustrated and all. They worked it out, and I think he's played his best the last two games, as he's getting in shape. But if you listen to the young men, we're talking about Harmon and Black, they're saying it's invaluable having Hayward there to not only lead by example, but he's taking them under his wing. And I think he sees these two young men are the future of his defensive line, even when he's gone for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he's trying to pass that along to them. And I think, all that coming together, we're seeing two excellent rookies right now.
I agree. Well, that was a good bye week for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and for us as Steeler fans, I think we all had a relaxing week with, our hearts cared free for most of us, I guess. Didn't go through a lot of stress. And,
exactly.
At the end of the day, the outcome of the NFL games throughout the weekend were favorable for the Steelers. Shannon, what do you got going on the rest of the week?
For sure, Wednesday, 8:00, we're going to have Pump Your Brakes. And we've already been talking to Brother Tate and Big G, and some of my podcast partners are really still in which quarterback, and I'm not necessarily signed up for taking a quarterback in the first round. It's got to be worth it, especially if you try to trade up, because there's a lot of talent, we know, and the Steelers might need it at another position, maybe offensive line. So we'll see. That'll be Wednesday at 8, and look forward to seeing everybody there.
Yes, sir. Look up some highlights on Fernando Mendoza, the Illinois quarterback. I think he's pretty good. He's
fun. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah, he's rising up the ranks there. Yeah. But I think he's pretty good. Well, guys, you'll check me out on State of the Steelers. It's an audio only podcast. So you only find it on SteelCurtainNetwork.com or wherever you find your podcasts. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. If you're listening to this on audio only, give us a 5-star rating if it's Apple Podcasts, or share the content wherever you can. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Shannon, take us out, my man.